So here we have the Vanguard series of Seraphon. Now, I don't really collect this faction. However, I thought it would be cool, and I thought that it would be a good chance for me to improve the skill of layering, which, you know, and when it comes to organic shapes, it's really easy to blend and do things, and it's a lot more forgiving than rigid shapes. So without further ado, let's get onto it.
All right, the Vanguard Seraphon set. Now, I do not own any other Seraphon except for this one, but I looked at it and I just saw all the potential that I can do with it. Like, I can learn how to paint better. I usually gravitate towards an airbrush for most of my things because it's quicker, but I at some point need to build up my brush skills. I need to be able to look at something and know where the highlights are and know where the sun is hitting the most. This is the part of the build that I love the most, because right here in its pieces on sprue is the pile of potential and where I can take it. I don't know where this journey is going to lead. I started thinking about color combinations. I started thinking about what works together all throughout the build. So I snipped these off using my God hand snippers, which I really do like. They're so smooth. But one of the things that I don't like about this kit in particular is that, you know, the chest is in multiple pieces, the arms are in different pieces, and it's kind of really weird. If you don't align it just so, it's not going to work out for you. So you have to be really delicate. And if you do want to reposition the body movements, you're going to have to build the entire thing, saw off and hack off, and then green stuff the other ones, pieces that are not there. But you see how they're building in halves, like half the carapace or half the back, half the chest. It has the potential of so many gaps. All right. So let's start painting this, and you're going to see this theme throughout the entire box set. We're going to start with a base coat of Screamer Pink from Citadel, and it is a base color. I do like the Citadel base colors that they have. They keep on changing the formula, so this way these tutorials are somewhat invalidated, but I do have to say that if you want to go for something, go for like a dark, really dark pink, almost purple color. And then go for a lighter pink. I use Emperor's Children from Citadel. And what I do is I put both of those colors on my wet palette and I blend in between so I can get like a half step in between them. So this way, when I layer, which is the technique that I really wanted to hammer home on this one and really ingrain, when I layer up in steps of volume. It's volumetric highlighting, where it's going from really dark recesses to really high highlights. In fact, I try to go almost as far as white when it comes to the really high recesses, simply because having that kind of gradient with the layers, would definitely help define what each area and each muscle. Now, you do need to be careful that when you highlight these things that you don't wind up with muscle islands. And what that means is you separate every muscle with a shadow on top as well as a shadow underneath, which is not fair. All shadows should be underneath, all the highlights should be on top. So this way it does separate, but it separates in a gradient and it does it layer at a time. It really makes a huge difference to the realism of what it is. Now, with this half step, and I mean, you have the Screamer Pink in the shadows, right? But the half step is covering about 90% of the muscles here. And we're just being very selective on where the shadows are going to be to have the most dramatic effect. Now, even if you the viewer of the model, if you pick up the model and didn't look at the color gradients, that's fine with me. I am picking up the skill in this one. And that is my main focus when I paint, is I want to improve a skill. I eventually want to go for a golden demon. And the only way that I can win that kind of award is that I practice not only my technical ability, but my storytelling ability, what I do with the bases and the world it lives in. So if I can work on those two things, I would be in the clear running for a lot of the masters that are out there that are going for the Golden Demon. There are so many master miniature painters out there. And as Vince Venturella told me during the Nova Open this year, I am just as good as everybody else and that I should believe in myself more. And honestly, it was those words that really kind of inspired me to really just put down the airbrush and just go to it with the brush and really try those volumetric highlights, going for that low to high using layering technique. And it worked out so well. It really did. When I said forget blending, like really did not think about blending, and you got to see the camera's just a little bit blurred on this one, simply because, and it's on purpose, is simply because so you can see that just on the corner of the eye, that just if you blur the photo itself, you know exactly where the highlights are going to be and where the low lights are going to be. So if you're going to take a picture and you really want to know, take a black and white picture, shine a light on one end and blur the picture so you can actually see exactly where the highlights are and how it should blend into the other colors. So that's just an exercise in blending and seeing light in a different way, because you do have primary source lighting and secondary source lighting. You have some color in the shadows, and that's where the screamer paint comes in as well. So knowing how light acts and reacts with different kind of shapes, super, super important. In fact, you have a book by Gurney, Studying of Light and Shadow. That is an excellent resource that all artists should at least read once in their life, because it does so much for knowing where a shadow should be and how light actually interacts with different kind of shapes and different kind of objects. It's important to know exactly where to place your highlight, where to place things. Now, you're just not doing a zenithal highlight where all the things are done for you. This, if you're going for a competitive painting, actually knowing exactly where to put your highlights and where to accentuate to extremes is just ultimately super important. So really just locking into those areas right there. Now, sometimes I paint and it's not realistic. Like sometimes I'll do a zenithal highlighting and not everything that I want to pop out and to accentuate is accentuated or does pop out. It has to do with the angle of the model and everything else. Here's where brush control comes in clutch, because with brush control, you're just pushing the pigment exactly where you want it to be, and you're not at the mercy of the angle in which you airbrushed it or zenithal primed it in order to depend on those lighting. You're choosing exactly where those highlights are going. You're choosing exactly where to push the pigment so you can have that dramatic effect, and having that control, having that much control over exactly where you want your highlights to be. It's so liberating. It's so liberating to me that I have the ability to do this, because honestly, as I was painting it, I didn't actually believe that I was painting it and that it came out so well, and that the thing that was stopping me from painting at this kind of level is my fear. My fear of making a mistake, my fear of not doing things right, my fear of, messing up. And I always say to paint bravely. So this is exactly what I did. I said, you know what? I'm going to put the airbrush to the side and I'm just going to paint, and I'm just going to enjoy the process of painting. I always said you can achieve all the things that I do with the airbrush with a paintbrush. It just takes longer time. Well, I actually wanted to just enjoy the process of painting, and I wanted to know if I can actually put these, push these to the point where I can paint at a certain level. Now, next up here are the scales, and I wanted to do a contrast between the pink and the blue, like a red and a white, inspired somewhat by the old Magneto comic books from the Marvel Comics, which I really like the color scheme. With this one, I went to Game Extra Opaque Azul Denso, and that's Spanish for heavy blue. And that's what I do, is Game Extra Opaque Heavy Blue, which I used for this one. Now, Vallejo actually changed their formula, so I don't know if you can actually get this one. But what you're trying to do on this one is getting almost like an ultramarine blue that is ultimately flat. And I like the extra opaque because that's perfect for your base coats. Now, what I do is I take, in this simple, very simple paint scheme, is I take sky blue from Vallejo Model Color, and it's acrylic colors. FS35456 is the actual number on it that I see it printed on the bottle itself. And what I do is, again, like I did for the Screamer Pink and the Emperor's Children, I build that half step. So I start off with painting all the scales individually, trying not to get in between the scales to separate them. And I paint that heavy blue. And then I take the sky blue and I put it on the wet palette itself. And then I smush the colors in between to get a half gradient step. And that's what I use to paint the second layer of the scales. Next layer of the scale can go two ways. Way number one is you go directly sky blue. You can go directly sky blue. And then if you want to push it even more, depending how really outrageous you want that color to really, really pop, you can go from sky blue. And sometimes I added acrylic artist ink white. I like using inks because it flows better. But can you use regular white paint? Absolutely. It's just that white paint gets a little chunky. So I kind of like to use something a little more flowy. You can always add a little bit of flow aid to your white paint to make it behave in the way you want it to. There's a lot of options when it comes to art. So you can choose which path you go to get a very similar result each time. Okay, so next is going to be, I decided on taking that sky blue and just really getting smaller and smaller with my highlights. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the lighter color in between that half step between heavy blue and sky blue. And just on the tip, I would say the skymost tip, I'm putting a little dot, and that's the volumetric highlighting. I'm creating volumes using lighter and lighter colors, and as you can see, and I really try for the camera to stay in focus. So sorry about that. One thing that you're going to need to know is that if you're doing such a small little highlight, especially on the small scales, like I see me doing on the arms right there, you're going to have to lock in your hands. I place my hands on the table. I hold my paint holder, the mini holder. I use pill bottles. And I rest my hand on top of the pill bottle to the side, actually, but the upper side of the pill bottle, limiting my movement. So this way I don't make any errant marks. I could just paint exactly where I need to. Now, one thing that I found challenging in this is that the tip needs to stay wet and the tip dries. Just like I do with my airbrush stuff, the tip dries. So I find myself re-wetting the tip. Now, one thing that I could have done that I didn't think of then, but hindsight is 2020, is that I could definitely have used either a thinner or some kind of flow medium or a paint drying retarder, which slows down the drying of the paint, and that could have been. So using mediums in different ways and knowing how to use mediums will help your paint behave the way you want it to. Okay, so next up is putting little silver highlights exactly where I kind of wanted the sun to hit. Was it white highlights, and then I went over it with a little bit of silver, just so I can hit some highlights in there. And you can create a dramatic effect simply by highlighting everything. If you highlight one area and don't highlight the next area, it's going to look fake. It's not going to read as if it's realistic. Now, if the light's hitting something and everything in that miniature, in that space, is highlighted at the same angle, the same degree, then it's going to look more realistic. The gold that I use there is actually Vallejo Liquid Gold, number 791 from Vallejo, and it's, I believe, alcohol based. So it is tough to paint and get it to stay where you want it to. It gets like really messy. You have to constantly shake it up. Yeah, I put it in a little cup and I shake it up constantly before I paint each time. So it's kind of tough to work with, but the gold is beautiful. All right, next up, what we have here is I'm painting the base. And the reason why I'm painting the base around the feet is because I am actually taking the poster putty and I'm putting the miniature on the poster putty, and knowing where the feet are laying, knowing knowing where the feet are laying, and I'm putting wood glue around here. And using that wood glue, I'm just putting a little bit of water and wood glue. So this way I can, I'm sorry, I have I have a daughter and a friend over. She's in the background. I do apologize for that. They are just silly. If you have girls, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they're 6 years old. They're very tiny. All right, so I put the wood glue over there so this way I can start building up the base and the base scenics, right? So a little bit of pine bark, a little bit of coconut shavings in there to make it like more foresty. And then, of course, you have a little bit of leaf scatter, which I got from Green Stuff World. It's called Natural Leaf Litter. And they're just little birch seeds that dried up. They look like little leaves. So I threw that in there as well, trying to feel like a foresty or jungle type of vibe with it. The coconut fibers are really great because it has like little threads that look like vines, which are pretty cool. And yeah, so getting that and knowing how the floor is going to, or the forest floor is going to interact with the miniature is important. The life or the world that you build around the miniature is just as important as the miniature itself. And of course, you're going to want to paint that, or at least, airbrush it or something. You're going to want to do something to mat it down, because it has to be as matted as the miniature itself, because then it doesn't look or read as real. So what I did was I just took a lighter green and just threw it up there. And in some cases, I just took green and then I just put the white in there to make that lime green kind of color, just so I can have that green variation. And it's all wet blending. So everything is very, very wet and going through that to create that kind of effect. Nothing too overpowering. I don't want the base to be more dynamic in range as the miniature, because I do want the attention to be on the miniature, but I do not want to neglect the base, that it doesn't vibe well, it doesn't match well, that it's like it's readable that he's in that fire or she is in that forest kind of environment. So it's important that you put some paint on there, but I do not like the base to be, or steal the show, or be the main focus of the miniature itself. So I really am concerned about that. So moving forward, you may want to just think about that. Or some Seraphon sepia. I thought it would be definitely appropriate to have some Seraphon sepia on the gold over there to give it that burnished kind of look, which I proceed to apply on the bottom of those. And what I do is, it's like I'm just going for a gradient here with the gold. And it's kind of tricky because the gold is reflective while this is not reflective. And I was taking a chance here on the very matte properties of the Seraphon sepia as opposed to the very shiny gold. But I thought, worst case scenario, if I wanted more shiny, I can just take some gloss medium and apply a little thin down wash of it just to give it that gleam back again. So I really wanted to get into and create a shadow with the shield. So I took my time and I really got into the cracks and crevices. And this was fun. It was a fun process. I was a little scared about putting a design. See, just having it in gold was a little too boring for me. So I just wanted to get the recesses in there and actually get the design and get that gradient of shadow occurring in the shield as well as occurring through the model. Because yeah, gold itself, just gold and with no shadow was kind of boring. So I had to up the contrast of that to make sure that I got it right. All right, so next up, what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to do bone. And again, this is taking a long time because this is like all the techniques. The rest of the video is going to be doing the Croxagores and doing all the other miniatures that are in the box set. But the techniques that I use here are exactly the same that I use on all the other things, just at a larger scale. And I will show you those. But as far as me doing the warriors, this portion of the video is going to be, I believe, the longest because I'm showing you every single detail. Okay, so I wanted to make this bone thing. So what I used was a nice bone. Any tan color would do. So, and what I did was is I took this wonderful paint. Okay. I took Aged High from, what is it? Army Painter Speed Paint range. And it's pale yellowish pink. And if you dilute it, it kind of looks like blood, a little bit like dried blood. And it's just amazing that I use that. So there's a technique that you can use on your miniature. Just dilute it and slowly glaze, put some glaze medium and put that in there and just slowly glaze that color in there. And it looks like there's been blood on that so many times, it stained it. And yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful paint to use. So I'm really happy that I bought these speed paint. I bought all the speed paints, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, it really added a color variation. I like the warm color. Obviously, I painted the feathers, as you can see up there. And I just painted a multicolor. I thought it would be kind of cool, and it was all wet blending. I just put one color on top of another color on top of another color. I kind of just like mixed them a little bit together so I can have a gradient going on there from one color to another. And then what I did, I just put edge highlighting on there, a little bit of white, just to edge highlight the feathers just a little bit to give it that special je ne sais quoi, the little flair to it. Now, as you can see, this glazing process with the dry blood took a lot of coats. I was thinking about, I painted it 4 to 6 times where I started building up the intensity. Just make sure that you allow the last layer of paint to dry before you apply the next layer of paint, because you can pick up some of the colors back up. And now the good thing about this is that it actually dries pretty quickly. So as you're building up the color and you work your way down the item of this particular banner, by the time I hit the bottom, the top is dry, and I can start again from the top and work my way to the bottom, just slowly pushing that pigment, just slowly. What I'm doing is tinting. That's what you do when you glaze. You're slowly tinting an area a little bit darker and a little bit darker. And glazing is amazing because you have control, and it just takes time. And I'm just sitting here and painting and enjoying the process of painting. So I didn't paint it for a competition. I didn't paint it for some kind of slow grow campaign or something. I just wanted to paint and have fun painting and bringing these little monsters to life. That's all I enjoy doing. I have played before, but it's not why I paint. It's not my motivation. My motivation isn't to make sure that I paint for some kind of competition or anything like that. My motivation is, well, how can I improve as a painter, and what steps do I need to take it to the next level? And I'm always trying to achieve the next level. So here I am, really wanting this to look like a little bit of a corn snake. If you see that, there has that two-tone, that red and that like beige tan going back and forth. And I kind of wanted to do that, a little bit of a corn snake kind of vibe going on there. But it needed something. You couldn't just paint it bone color. I think it was Screaming Skull. And leave it at that. Like, it was way too boring. I wanted some contrast. I wanted some interest that I wanted to add in there. And I'm telling you, finding this Aged Hide from Speed Paint, what a godsend when it comes to glazing. I love these speed paints because they're easier to glaze with, in my opinion, than anything else that I've done. With the paint, you can glaze, but it just takes a little more work, and it's just so easy. You just thin it down and glaze. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. You got some glaze medium, you're good to go. You are good to go. And look how that transition goes. It doesn't create like water stains. So having that glaze medium cuts down on the water tension. So this way it doesn't look like there's a ring around where you painted. It just has no water tension. So this way, wherever you put the paint is where it's going to dry, especially if you're working wet and you're having a lot of layers to that wetness. And again, just going back and darkening just a little bit, just touching here and there, just little touches to make it darker and more pronounced. And having that contrast between the darkest area going right up to bone, going right up to the lightest area is really what makes that dramatic interest into the model. That's why it looks like that, and I'm very proud of the way it came out. So after several different passes, there it is. The banner is all complete. It's time for some edge highlighting, going back with the original color, that's Screaming Skull, which I'm just going to go onto the edges right there, only where the kind of like where I think the light is going to hit it. Be very careful not to overdo it here. You don't want to load your brush too much. You may want to wipe off before other passes. If not, it's going to start looking sloppy and you're going to have to re-highlight those areas or re-glaze those areas again, which I invested enough time in this. I would definitely do it again, but I just didn't want to invest any more time that I didn't have to highlighting or repainting areas because I was just lazy and not wiping off my brush for this step right here. But with those edge highlights makes a world of difference. All right, now we're done.
These Saurus warriors were an absolute dream to paint. Now, I didn't know what to expect with them and expect when it comes to layering with them, but getting into a routine and having an infantry where you can practice the skill over and over and over again and relatively mess up a couple of times because honestly, if it's infantry, there's so many of them that they're really going to focus on them when you put them on the field. However, each one of these are a special little butterfly and hold a good place in my heart simply because I learned so much from them, so I appreciate them in that manner. Am I going to play them? Who knows? Who knows if I'm ever going to play them, but they were a joy to paint. All right, let's get on to something a little bigger.
All right, time for those Croxagores. Again, with the same technique. This is going to be a little quicker. The last section I did a little longer simply because I wanted to show you every complete step. This is the same thing, but a lot larger. So starting with that Screamer Pink, that's super important to get that nice base coat so you can have nice shadows. Next up, I brighten things up. I don't know if you wanted to see that, but I wanted to brighten things up so I can show you exactly where I put the highlights in, just thinking about that. And then again, that's a mixture between Emperor's Children and Screamer Pink. I really do like those Citadel colors. I think they really work very well and they're very easy to get highlights for. And you can see how much I push the values of the light in. And then, you know, after the in-between step, if you want to add some acrylist artist ink white from Vallejo to give you that step, that actually helps you out as well to, you know, boost the contrast of everything. I think it came out pretty well. So next, going for that blue again, the heavy blue from Game Opaque, Extra Opaque Game Color. Really subdued blue here. I'm going through the steps a little more quickly than the last time, so you can see the Croxagores just pretty much get done, because most of it is just all the same. All right, so finishing up, again, that detail with that sky blue, doing half steps, adding some acrylic artist ink in there. Simple as it can be. It just takes time and patience to get every little square down, so this way you can get it done and it looks as if it's reflecting light, and that is important to sell the effect of the reflection of said light. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. Exercise of patience for sure.
Oh, the Croxagores. They are so much fun to paint. I did try to go for a scheme, more like a Tyranid kind of chitin scheme where it has on the back. And I try something new with that because, you know, I do have Tyranids and I might use that when it comes to painting their backs and their scales as well with a different color completely, or maybe I'll do dots. I don't know. Painting is fun for me, so I really enjoy different kind of options that I have and to improve as a painter, so this way I can get it to a competition or something like that, and just enjoy it in my cabinet at home. And who knows, if anybody comes by, we can play a game, which is always delightful. But these Croxagores, chef's kiss.
Alrighty, it's time for the Saurus Old Blood. We're going to start off with that Saurus Old Blood. Again, painting in the same color scheme. Starting off with that simple Screamer Pink. Moving on to in between the Emperor's Children Screamer Pink as a mid-tone. and then going straight to Screamer Emperor's Children. And for the real highlights here, or the champions here, is Emperor's Children with acrylic artist ink. That's not to say that you can't mix acrylic artist ink with Screamer Pink and just go up the gradient like that. You can actually, and that's very viable in order for you to do. So that's something that you can do as well. And that could definitely help you out. And then we're going to move on to, again, the heavy blue for those scales. And we just keep on going with those, and the midtone being heavy blue and sky blue. And then if you really want to do it, sky blue, and then sky blue and acrylic artist ink white for that kind of transition there. And that is mainly the color scheme, very limited palette color scheme that I use for this, and I think it really sells. It sells really, really well. Now, I did do this pan out view of the Saurus Warrior simply because I forgot to zoom in, but that's fine. You get to see part of my hair, sorry, and then part of my little magnifying glass eyewear that I wear. All right, going straight into that sky blue. It could be ice blue. It could be any kind of light blue. It could be just, you can go straight from heavy blue and just add some acrylic artist ink white to it and do the gradient, or any paint. As long as you have a gradient coming in there, it's fine. I just like to use 3 colors, mainly use 3 colors whenever I'm doing it. And that's usually the dark color, the undershade color, muted shadow, a pop color, and then white to really sell it and go to that next extreme. So using that kind of like triad is pretty good. And then, of course, some dark, warm tone, because I feel like the ice blue and carapace being on top makes the model seem more cold. So in order to add some warmth into it, actually, it's a base coat of Shanti Bone and then Screaming Skull. Those are the 2. Again, you can mix in between those colors to get a gradient, and then finally acrylic artist ink white mixed in with Screaming Skull. And of course, you can have the combination of Shanti Bone and acrylics artist ink and just do the gradient all the way up as well if you just wanted to use 2 colors. Most artists do that. Most artists kind of just like go onto their palette and just mix colors straight onto there. And it works out just great. Now, time for some liquid gold from Vallejo. It's Oro Licuado, Oro 791 gold. And that, again, it's alcohol based. So it is very runny and it clumps and it's kind of difficult to work with. But the gold that you get is so divine. I love how it comes out, and it is absolutely amazing. Does it dry really quick? Absolutely. Does it have gold flecks? Absolutely. Can you see the grain? No, you can't. It does what it says on the tin. It looks like gold. It is absolutely fabulous. So this one has a lot of golden armor. It kind of drowns out the skin somewhat. But and the Golden Throne doesn't help it really blend in with that. But it really does pop against the Carnosaur for sure. That's something that it really has contrast with. All right, let me get a little closer for you. I remember zooming in on this one so you can actually see that. And this is the effect of that age hide and how it just really just tints things up. And again, just adding some medium to that. I use some flow improver actually. And what I'm doing is simply glazing onto the gold so the gold doesn't just look one color. In fact, people have asked me if that is non-metallic metal gold because it does read that way, but it's so shimmery. It is really the most epic gold I think that I can possibly use. It's just really difficult to work with sometimes. All right, now we're using some dark aluminum for the hand. Okay, down to the Carnosaur. Once again, the same simple, limited color palette that I use with the Screamer Pink and the Emperor's Children Pink and that white to sell onto the bottom. Same technique, but this time I'm doing or even over a larger surface. And in doing that, what I do is I use all the technique and the muscle memory that I use from all the other previous models. It's almost like this is a treat for me. Like I've earned the way to go all the way up and play around with these colors now in a confident manner because I've done them so many times that it becomes second nature. Now moving on to those scales. Now the scales, I did want to kind of like show you all the scales in between, because what I really want to do is to demonstrate that I now have confidence in my brush strokes, and I wanted to show you how to do that gradient over larger panels. I wanted to get that too. But now that it's Base Coast, I'm going to go back to the Screamer Pink and back to the Emperor's Children and just doing those quick little strokes, building up the colors, the layers, as you will, and being very careful on where I want to put the light. Having all that control is absolutely amazing. Now, you do have to sell it. You do have to be confident in it. Because if you're not confident in your abilities, you're not going to know, you're not going to be bold enough to put the colors where you want them. You're not going to control that. You're not leaving anything to fate. You are controlling everything within your paint job and bringing out amazing colors. And it's just fun when it just clicks. All right, there it is, all those colors. And on a larger model, it really does pop. Look at that contrast right there. It is, yeah, my final pictures don't do it justice. Okay, let me show you what I did for a larger area, because some of this Carnosaurs, their scales are larger. So this is going to take a bit of it's going to take the longest part of the video, so you get to see this. But again, using the same colors, here's that mid-tone, and adding some of the flow medium, so this way I can get it over there, and covering a good 85 to 90% of the scale. And with the larger scale, you kind of want to tone it back a little bit. You kind of want to like just do one side. And that's what I did. My attack for the larger scales is that I just did one side of it. And I did little hashes to begin with, going straight down. You get to see the brush just gently dabbing or slashing straight down, because that's something I do when I'm drawing, right? I put little hashes in there to simulate like a shadow, but in this part, we're just doing light. We're doing the inverse. So we're putting little lines across the edges of it, almost like an edge highlight or an overbrushed edge highlight. That's really a big word there that I invented. And we're going down with it, not overwhelming the piece, just having fun and putting happy little lines going straight down the scale, being happy with it, and enjoying the process. Now, a lot of things you can do on this one. You could do a loaded brush technique. But again, I just wanted to practice layering. That was my biggest hurdle between this, because I've seen a lot of amazing paint jobs just really utilizing the layering technique and not getting stressed out by, all the smoothness and perfect blends. Just having fun, and you could have the desired effect by not driving yourself crazy. Not everything is non-metallic metal gold. Not everything has to be pushed with buttery smooth blends. Sometimes you can actually communicate a story of shadow and light using layers, using other techniques. So don't get trapped in one way of doing things. I guess that's the synopsis of everything that I'm saying here, that you need to have different methods and different things you got to try out to add things to your toolbox. So when you confront something, you can decide how you're going to attack it, how you're going to approach the model in a fun way that you're enjoying. Because again, this is a hobby. So if you're not enjoying yourself, then, get somebody else to paint it if painting is not your forte. But there it is. And if playing is just your forte, then, you're really good at it. And playing is not my forte. It's something I like to do with the models, with my wife, and we have fun. And I don't have to worry about kind of going to the game store or doing anything like that. And and meeting up with some of the toxic people out there and that I don't want to meet up with. But I am missing an opportunity to get some friends. I'm not opposed to playing other people, but I'm not actually actively seeking people. I'm not desperate for people to play with. So that's good, because if I want to play more than one army, I have tons of armies that I can play. And if my wife wants to play against me, I can have a different scenario and different vibes, because I bought so many books with so many different kind of scenarios that we can play out that it's almost limitless. It's definitely going to take quite a few years before we play through all the scenarios that I have planned for us, which is awesome, because I get to play a whole bunch of different games with a whole bunch of different lists and have fun with it. My wife and I have not played Age of Sigmar yet, although she has claimed my Flesh Eater Quartz army as her own. She really likes the aesthetic, which is fine. Maybe I'll just play this Vanguard set with whatever the Vanguard set for Flesh Eater Quartz is. We'll put that together and we'll just play a game of Vanguard. That should be fun. So I really did like painting up this Carnosaur. If you don't know, Carnosaurs or Saurus Old Bloods on Carnosaurs are pretty vicious. I mean, they have a degrading platform here, but essentially they got to start off with an 18 movement, which is massive on the board, a D6 attack, 3d6 to hit, 3 up to hit, 3 up to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage on each one. But we have different kind of profiles here. Like the Carnosaur itself is 2 inches, 5 damage. I don't know how to read these, actually. I gotta look at the symbols again to know how to read this. They changed it. They didn't just put move and stuff like that on this instruction sheet, so it's kind of confusing. Okay, there's a missile weapon. I see that now. I have to figure out AOS again. I have not played AOS 4.0 just yet. I did get the Skaven set, the starter box, Skaven Tide, but I have not played any games of 4.0, and I haven't played any games of 40K 10th edition either. So I'm a little behind on that because, well, I don't know. I'm busy just painting up my horde of miniatures and having fun with that. And hopefully I can win the Golden Demon. That would be absolutely amazing. But first things first, I do want to win. I do want to win a medal in the Nova Open. I did pin in Nova Open the Masterclass, but I want to win a medal in the Nova Open Masterclass. That means I'm gunning for some of the top artists. So here I am, again, going another step up. I'm a little more subtle with the transitions here, going from that sky blue and just simply adding a little more sky blue as I'm doing the transition. And painting the scales, I think I painted the scales, every single scale, I believe it was about 4 times each. So it took a while to really get the punch that I really wanted to with these scales. I really wanted to add a lot of dimension to it. I want you to look at the scales and almost see into the scale, having that texture of a scale and having those divisions in between the scales, those black lines in between that I'm just being very careful not to paint in between. You see how I'm holding my hand with one hand just to brace my hand so this way I can get accuracy with my brush. That's super important, to brace your hand so this way you have better control over what's going on with your paintbrush, and your hand can slip very easily, making errant marks and a very disappointing bad day. So being careful is super important, and just touching here and there also important. Knowing where you're going with it and doing every stroke of your brush should be very mindful and purposeful so you can put things exactly where you want them. All right, now I'm going really high with these. The highlights, and you can see it really start popping now with those little dots. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted all my Saurus warriors to seem like their scales were a starry night, where there's just like stars poking through the veil of the night sky. And I thought that was very apt for being Star Warriors as they are. It just told that tale for me. Again, if you want to paint meaningfully, one of the things that you need to do is start telling a story with your paint. Start telling what it is, have a reason for why you're doing it. If you really want to take your painting to display level or higher quality level, and just have something in your cabinet that will wow your friends and everything else, not just by the sheer volume of models you have, but because of the quality of the paint job that you painted yourself. I need to have something that I can feel proud of. Like I can look back and say, hey, I did something here and I've improved here. I look back at my painting cabinet and I'll see like a whole bunch of failures, but I never go back and repaint anything. I feel that spaceships don't have rear view mirrors. So it's just a testament of what I've done before and the legacy of my painting ability, through which I can see I can see very clearly with all the models that I painted within my cabinet and how I'm improving as a painter each and every day. And that's another thing that's really, really important for you to do as a painter. Don't compare yourself to me or anybody else. You can only compare yourself to your past self. In other words, whatever you painted yesterday and whatever you're painting today, as long as you have this 1% improvement, like Atomic Habits, that book was great. As long as you have that 1% improvement, you are improving towards your goal. If you have a 1% improvement every single day, you're going to have a 365% improvement in your painting ability in just 1 year. So they keep that into perspective. Fail forward. If you make a mistake, don't crumble and cry about it, because that's not going to do any good for you, but learn from it. And that's something that you should definitely do with each paint job. All right, over here, this is really interesting for me because this kind of paint job is something, it's going to be less subdued, but that's something I think I'm going to do on a gosh. All right, there it is. It's all done and it is fabulous. Now to paint this leather strap around here and hopefully not mess up the entire paint job. But accidents do happen like this. Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, so it fell down, right? What am I going to do here? I'll just pick it up and keep painting. It's not the end of the world, but I did glue that portion down to that medicine bottle, and that's why. But once it fell off, I used it to my advantage. Oh, look at that contrast right there. Doesn't that look lovely? That's under this lighting, it looks so much more amazing. I don't even think the reveal does it justice, but I think this is fabulous. All right. So now time for the teeth. Again, Ushanti Blown and Screaming Skull, and using a little bit of that aged hide to do that little red in there. Very simple paint scheme. Again, repeating everything. I wanted to keep this paint job, my palette, super, super simple. And this way it doesn't look too overwhelming. Time for some more gold. Again, that liquid gold from Vallejo, which is, worth its weight in. You guessed it. So going through, there was a lot of little gold bars on this thing, which give it like that Aztec-y kind of feel to it, which is pretty cool. It's real. I'm a Spanish teacher, so, I'm vibing with it. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, overall, we're getting to the end of this, and this was heck of fun to paint. It really was. It was an experiment and it was a total success. Now I just have to worry about the base and doing the same techniques as before and just building something a little special. Remember to paint your bases and make them match your miniatures, but don't let them be overwhelming. All right, I'm going to leave you here with these bricks and let's go to the outro.
The Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur. It was a little bit of intimidating for me because I knew it was bigger and more of what I'd been practicing throughout the entire Vanguard box set, which was to paint every single scale individually and to put in tones and rule of cool and where would light values be and playing around with different layering techniques because I know I need to do that. I do a lot of airbrush work and I really wanted to just to do brush work, solely brush work, which is It was so relieving that I can be able to get over that hurdle. I feel like with painting, there are hurdles that we place upon ourselves. Like, I can never do that, or I can't do that. We lack the confidence. Once again, paint bravely and go on and try something that scares you. What's the worst that can happen? You could always paint over it and try again. What's the best that can happen? You improve. All right, let's get back to the final comments, and it's time for the grand reveal. So there it is, the Vanguard box set completed in my own kind of paint scheme that feel free to borrow if you're interested in doing that. It was really fun to paint up, and I'm trying to do a little different. I have such a large backlog that I think I'm gonna paint one box at a time and do a tutorial on all of them instead of having one tutorial per miniature that I paint, because it's taking so long with video editing that I'm not getting my stuff really done, and my backlog is getting absolutely massive. And if you've watched any other videos that I put out recently, you can see how large my backlog is getting, and I need to do something serious about that. Plus, I would like to level up my painting skills more than my videography skills, even that. So in order to do that and be a competitive painter and possibly even get a golden demon one day, I am definitely going to have to up my painting game. So 2025 is going to see me painting a whole bunch of armies and a whole bunch of boxes. Now that does mean that the videos coming out once a week is not going to happen. Now, I am a teacher full-time, and that is my passion. I love helping kids. I love teaching and inspiring others. It's what I do. This is my hobby. If you want this to be more frequent, then you could always donate, buy me a coffee or something like that. Donate to me either through Super Chat, or, you know, I have a Patreon, the Miniatures Paintbrush. If you're interested in that, there's no real reward to you because I don't have the time, you know, but I'd like to come in clutch. I am going to have some swag coming out, so if you're interested in that, I'm designing a t-shirt, another one. So stay tuned for that. All right, so this is it for the Vanguard Seraphon box set. We can just, you know, kind of get rid of that. all done, right? And we're gonna get on to a next box in that hoard of mine that is my backlog. Well, see you on the next one. Bye. Take care. Bye.